Little Emma stood in the middle of Dallas Airport Terminal 3, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy?" she called out, voice barely a whisper. "Mommy, where are you?" People rushed past her. Nobody stopped. Nobody looked down at the tiny 4-year-old girl with blonde curls and a worn teddy bear. She had been walking forever, trying to find her mommy. But every hallway looked the same. She wiped her nose and kept walking. That's when she saw him. A man in a dark suit sat slumped in a chair near gate 17. His head was in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. He was crying. Emma had never seen a grown-up cry like this. She walked closer. Emma stood right in front of him, hugging her teddy bear tighter. "Mister," she said softly. The man's head jerked up. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked at Emma, confused. "Why are you crying?" Emma asked. The man wiped his face, trying to pull himself together. "I lost someone very important to me," he said, voice rough. Emma nodded slowly. "I lost my mommy too," she whispered. The man's expression changed. "You're lost?" he asked, leaning forward. Emma nodded, fresh tears falling. "I can't find her anywhere," she said. The man sat up straighter. Something shifted in his face. The sadness was still there, but now there was concern too. "How long have you been looking?" he asked gently. Emma shrugged. "A really long time." The man glanced around the crowded terminal. "How could a child get lost here?" "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked. "Emma. Emma Rose Thompson." "That's a beautiful name." "My name is David. David Morrison." Emma looked at his fancy suit. "Are you a prince?" she asked. Despite everything, David let out a small laugh. "No, honey. I'm just a man who made a lot of mistakes." "Did your person go to heaven?" Emma asked. "My teacher says that's where people go when they can't come back." David's face crumpled. He pressed his hand against his mouth. "Yes," he managed to say. "Yes, she did." Emma walked closer and patted David's knee. "It's okay to cry. Mommy says crying helps the hurt come out." David looked down at this tiny child trying to comfort him. Something inside him shifted. "Thank you, Emma," he whispered, but alarm bells rang in his head. This child was alone, lost. He needed to help her. "Emma," David said, wiping his face and trying to sound calm. "We need to find your mommy, okay? Can you tell me what happened? How did you get separated from her?" Emma's bottom lip trembled. "I saw a puppy and followed it," she said. "But then I couldn't find the gate anymore." "Oh, Mommy." David's heart clenched. "Okay, Emma, do you know what gate you were at?" Emma shook her head. "I don't know numbers yet. I'm only 4. David nodded. "We'll figure it out." He pulled out his phone, hands shaking. Just an hour ago he had been at his wife's grave. And now this child needed him. He couldn't fall apart. "Not now." David stood up and held out his hand. "Let's go find airport security. They'll help us find your mommy." Emma looked at his hand. This man had kind eyes. Sad eyes, but kind. She took his hand. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his, and David felt something break open in his chest. Purpose. They started walking through the terminal. "What does your mommy look like?" David asked. "She has brown hair and glasses, and a red bag." "Good, that helps, Emma." They passed gate after gate. "Only strangers everywhere, Mr. David," Emma said quietly. "Are you going to leave me too?" The question hit David like a punch. "No, Emma, I'm not going to leave you. I promise." Emma squeezed his hand tighter. He was supposed to be on a flight to New York right now, but that didn't matter anymore. This child mattered. They reached the security desk. 2 officers stood there. "This little girl is lost," David said. "She's been separated from her mother." The female officer kneeled down to Emma. "Hi, sweetie. I'm Officer Martinez. What's your name?" "Emma," the little girl said shyly. "Don't worry, Emma. We'll find your mommy fast." Officer Martinez looked at David. "And you are?" "David Morrison. I found her near gate 17. The male officer called it in. Code yellow, Terminal 3. Female child, 4 years old, blonde hair. Mother has brown hair, glasses, red bag. Within seconds, announcements started. Security began sweeping the terminals. Emma held tight to David's hand. "Mr. David has to stay with me," she told Officer Martinez. "He promised." Officer Martinez smiled. "Is that okay with you, sir?" David nodded. "I'll stay until her mother is found." But something felt strange. Why did holding her hand feel like something he was meant to do? "Emma, what's your mommy's name?" Officer Martinez asked. Sarah Thompson." David froze. No, it couldn't be. Sarah Thompson, he repeated. Emma nodded. Do you know my mommy? David's mind raced. That name. He knew that name. Officer Martinez typed into her computer. We're running the name now. David's hands started shaking. Why did that name feel so important? Mr. David? Emma said, tugging his hand. Are you okay? You look sad again. David looked down at her, at this beautiful lost child with blonde curls and blue eyes, at her small face full of concern and innocence. And suddenly a memory hit him. 20 years ago, Seattle. A woman named Sarah Thompson, the eyes. The feeling that this was meant to happen. David's legs almost gave out. He grabbed the desk. Sir, are you all right? Officer Martinez asked. David stared at Emma, seeing her in a completely different light. Seeing the truth that would change everything. Officer Martinez guided David to a chair. Emma climbed next to him, never letting go of his hand. Mr. David, what's wrong? She asked. David tried to breathe. 20 years ago, Seattle, a car accident. A woman named Sarah Thompson had helped him, but there were thousands of Sarah Thompsons. This was just a coincidence, except David didn't believe in coincidences anymore. I'm okay, Emma, just tired, David managed to say. Officer Martinez handed him water. Drink this. We've got a hit, the male officer called out. Flight 273 to Phoenix. Sarah Thompson, age 39, with child Emma Thompson, age 4. Gate 22, Officer Martinez said. I'll call them. Emma swung her legs, still holding David's hand. When I'm sad, my mommy lets me have ice cream. Maybe you need ice cream too. Despite everything, David smiled. Maybe I do. Officer Martinez hung up. Gate 22 is holding the flight. But Sarah Thompson is panicking. She's been looking for 45 minutes. David's chest tightened. A mother's worst nightmare. We need to get Emma to her now, David said. Security cart is coming. 5 minutes, Officer Martinez said. Emma gripped David's hand tighter. You're coming too, right? You promised. David knelt down. Emma, your mommy is waiting. She's so worried. But you're coming too, Emma insisted. I want you to meet my mommy. Officer Martinez shrugged. Fine with me. The mother will want to thank you. David nodded. Okay, Emma, I'll come. Emma's face lit up. Minutes later, they zipped through the terminals in a security cart. Emma sat on David's lap, less scared now, more excited. But David felt like he was riding towards something much bigger than reuniting a child with her mother. He felt like he was riding toward destiny. The cart pulled up to gate 22. A woman paced frantically near the counter. Dark brown hair, glasses, red bag, tears streaming down her face. Mommy, Emma called out. The woman's head snapped up. Emma, she screamed. She ran toward them. Emma jumped off David's lap and ran to her mother. They collided in a desperate, relieved embrace that made everyone watching feel their hearts clench. Sarah Thompson dropped to her knees on the airport floor, holding her daughter, sobbing into her hair. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, Sarah kept saying. Emma, baby, I thought I lost you. I thought someone took you. Oh my God, I'm okay, Mommy, Emma said. A nice man helped me. Sarah looked up, searching for whoever had helped her child. Her eyes landed on David. Her face went completely white. No, Sarah whispered. It can't be. David stood frozen. He knew that face. Even with 20 years of aging, he knew her. Sarah, he said. Sarah stood slowly, pulling Emma close. She stared at David like she was seeing a ghost. David Morrison, she said in shock. Officer Martinez looked between them. You two know each other. Neither answered. They were locked in a stare, remembering the same night 2 decades ago. Sarah's legs shook. She sat down in the nearest chair. Mommy, you know Mr. David, Emma asked, confused. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth. Different tears now, complicated. We met a long time ago, she managed to say. David moved closer, slowly. 20 years ago, Seattle. The car accident. You stopped to help me. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. In that moment, they felt like the only 2 people in the world. I never got to thank you, David continued. You disappeared before the ambulance came. I looked for you but couldn't find you. I had to leave, Sarah whispered. I didn't think... She shook her head, looked at Emma, then back at David. What are the chances, she said, that 20 years later you'd be the one to find Emma? David shook his head. I don't know, but Sarah, I need to tell you something. Sarah waited, gripping Emma's shoulder. My wife died 3 weeks ago. I buried her this morning. I was in a very dark place, and Emma saved me. Just like you did 20 years ago. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. David, I'm so sorry. They stood there, two people brought back together by the lost child between them. Officer Martinez cleared her throat. Everything okay here? Child is safe with mother? Yes, she's safe. Thank you, Sarah said, hugging Emma tight. Thank Mr. David, Emma said. He held my hand the whole time. Sarah looked at David. Something heavy and complicated passed between them. Thank you for taking care of her, Sarah said. Of course. Anyone would have done the same. But that wasn't true, and they both knew it. The gate agent approached. Miss Thompson, your flight is ready. Sarah nodded. We're coming. She took Emma's hand. Say goodbye to Mr. David. Emma pulled away and ran to David, wrapping her arms around his legs. Thank you for helping me, Emma said. I hope you stop being sad. David knelt and hugged her back. Thank you, Emma. You helped me, too. More than you know. Emma looked at him seriously. Will I see you again? David glanced at Sarah, who watched with an unreadable expression. I don't know, David said honestly, but I want to see you again. You're my friend now, Emma said. Sarah stepped forward. Sweetie, Mr. David has to go home. He has his own life. But David stared at Sarah, seeing not just the woman from 20 years ago, but the mother who had raised this incredible child. Where do you live? David asked suddenly. Sarah hesitated. Phoenix, what do you do? I'm a waitress. At a diner near our apartment. David nodded slowly. Can I have your phone number? Sarah looked shocked. Why? Because I think Emma is right. I think we should see each other again. Sarah shook her head. David, you're a billionaire businessman. You're not someone who stays in touch with random people from airports. You're not random, David said firmly. You saved my life 20 years ago. And today your daughter saved it again. That's fate. Sarah shook her head more firmly. No, David. You have your life and I have mine. They don't intersect, why not? David demanded. Sarah looked at Emma, then back at David. Her eyes were full of fear. Because it's complicated. There are things you don't know. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. We have to go, Sarah said, picking up Emma. But I don't want to leave Mr. David. Emma wailed. I know, baby. But we have to go home. David felt panic rising. He couldn't let them walk away. Sarah, please. Just give me your number, please. But Sarah was already walking toward the gate, Emma crying on her shoulder. Goodbye, David, Sarah called back, and then they were gone. Through the gate, out of his life as quickly as they had entered it, David stood there alone, feeling more lost than he had all day. Officer Martinez touched his shoulder. You okay? No, David said honestly. He walked back through the airport in a daze. His flight had left hours ago. But he couldn't make himself care. All he could think about was Emma's blue eyes. Sarah's terrified expression. What had Sarah meant? What was so complicated? David pulled out his phone and made a decision. He called his assistant. Michael, I need you to find someone for me. Of course, sir. Who? Sarah Thompson. Lives in Phoenix. Works as a waitress. Has a 4-year-old daughter named Emma. Sir, is this appropriate? Michael asked carefully. Just do it. It's important. All right. 24 hours. David hung up and walked toward the ticket counter to book a new flight home, but he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed course, and that Sarah Thompson, for reasons he didn't yet understand, was running from it. 3 days later, David sat in his New York penthouse, staring at the folder Michael had delivered. Full name: Sarah Marie Thompson. Age 39. Address: 2-bedroom apartment in Phoenix. Occupation: waitress at Rosie's Diner. Marital status: single mother-child, Emma Rose Thompson, age 4, Emma's father unknown. Not listed on birth certificate. David flipped through photographs. Sarah walking Emma to preschool. Sarah working at the diner. Sarah at the grocery store, counting money carefully. She was struggling. Single mother, low-wage job, raising a child alone. But something made David's blood run cold. Medical records: Emma had been hospitalized twice in the past year. Pneumonia, severe infection. Current balance owed, $17,300. David closed the folder and pressed his hands against his face. This felt invasive, but he couldn't stop thinking about them. About Emma's hand in his, about the feeling that he was meant to help them. His phone rang. Michael. Sir, I have information about Sarah Thompson's employment history. Go ahead. She's worked at Rosie's Diner for 6 years. Before that, She worked at various retail and food service jobs, never anything professional or corporate. No college degree on record. She graduated high school in Seattle, but there's no record of any higher education. David frowned. She was studying to be a nurse. There's a gap in her employment history, Michael said. From 19 years ago until 6 years ago, nothing. She essentially disappeared for 13 years. What? How? Unknown, sir. But when she reappeared, she had a baby. Emma was about 1 year old. David's mind raced. Emma was 4 years old. Sarah had been gone for 13 years and reappeared with a baby. No father listed. He did the math. Emma was born about 5 years ago. 15 years after their first meeting. Could there be a connection? No, they had only met once at an accident scene. But then why had Sarah looked so terrified? Why had she refused to give him her number? David paced his penthouse. The city lights glittered below. He had built an empire. He had everything money could buy, but his wife was gone. He had no children. He felt more alone than ever, except for those few minutes with Emma. Those few minutes where he had felt needed. His phone rang. Phoenix area code, David answered immediately. Hello? Mr. David. His heart stopped. Emma's voice. Emma? Is that you? Yeah. I took Mommy's phone. She doesn't know. David sat down heavily. Where's your mommy? She's in the shower. I wanted to call because I miss you. Are you still sad? David's throat closed up. I'm doing a little better. Are you okay? Back home in Phoenix. Uh-huh. But I don't like it here. It's hot and there's no one to play with. And Mommy has to work all the time. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Why did you cry at the airport? Did they get lost like I got lost? David closed his eyes. She went to heaven. Just like your teacher told you. She was very sick. Was she your mommy? No, she was my wife. My best friend and the person I loved most in the world. Emma was quiet. I'm sorry she went to heaven, Emma said. But maybe she sent me to find you. Maybe she knew you needed a friend. David felt tears streaming down his face. How did this child understand things most adults couldn't grasp? Maybe she did, David whispered. Emma Rose Thompson. Sarah's voice echoed. What are you doing with my phone? Uh-oh, I gotta go. Bye, Mr. David. The line went dead. His phone rang again. Same number. He answered. I am so sorry, Sarah said. I don't know how she got my phone. She's 4. It's okay. I'm glad she called. I've been thinking about you both. Silence. Sarah, we need to talk, David said. No, we don't. Yes, we do. There are things that don't make sense. David, please. Just forget about us. Go back to your life, and I can't, David said firmly. Sarah, I know you're struggling. I know you have medical debt. Let me help you. How do you know about that? Sarah's voice went cold. Did you investigate me? David hesitated. I needed to find you, to understand why you ran away. You had no right, Sarah shouted. You had no right to invade my privacy. I'm sorry, but Sarah, something isn't adding up. Where were you for 13 years? Who is Emma's father? The silence that followed was deafening. That's none of your business, Sarah said, voice shaking, isn't it? Sarah, Emma has your eyes but blonde hair. You have dark hair, and those eyes. They're a very specific shade of blue. Stop it, Sarah whispered. I had an uncle with eyes that exact color, David continued, his heart pounding. My grandfather, too. It runs in my family. That particular shade of ice blue. Stop it! Sarah screamed. David's hands shook. Sarah, is Emma my daughter? The question hung in the air like a bomb. Sarah was crying now, sobbing. Please, she begged. Please, David, just leave us alone. I can't, not until you tell me the truth. Is she mine? More sobbing. Then finally barely a whisper. Yes, the world tilted. David couldn't breathe. What? Yes, Emma is your daughter. She's ours. David stood, legs barely holding him. How? When? We only met once. No, Sarah said quietly. That's not true. We met twice, and then she told him. After the accident, Sarah began, voice shaking, I couldn't stop thinking about you. You said you were staying at the Grand Hotel. David sat down slowly. I went to find you the next day, Sarah continued. I felt drawn to you. The hotel called your room. You came down to the lobby. David squeezed his eyes shut, trying to remember. 20 years ago, Seattle. And then it hit him. A flash of memory. A young woman with dark hair. Sarah. They had talked in the hotel bar for hours. About life. About dreams. about loneliness and fear and hope, and then they had gone upstairs. "Oh my God," David breathed. "I remember now. How did I forget?" "You were grieving," Sarah said softly. "Your fiancé had just called off your engagement. You were heartbroken. You drank too much." "We both did." And then, David remembered now. One night, one beautiful, sad, desperate night, and then morning had come. An empty bed and a note. "You left," David said. "You were gone when I woke up. Why?" "Because I was scared," Sarah said. "Because you were this successful businessman from New York, and I was just a community college student. Because that night felt like a dream, and I thought if I stayed, reality would ruin it. You should have stayed." "Sarah, if I had known—" "Known what? That I got pregnant?" David's hands clenched. "Yes, if I had known, everything would have been different. I tried to tell you," Sarah said, crying harder. "After I realized I was pregnant, I tried to find you. But I only knew your first name and that you were from New York. I didn't know your last name. I searched everywhere. I even hired a private investigator with money I couldn't afford. But we couldn't find you." David felt like he was dying inside. All those years. He had a daughter and he never knew. What happened? Where did you go? Sarah took a shaky breath. "My parents," she said bitterly. "When I told them I was pregnant and couldn't find the father, they were furious. They gave me two choices: have an abortion or leave their home and never contact them again." David's jaw clenched. "What did you do?" "I left. I packed a bag and left that same night. I was 19 years old, pregnant, alone." "Where did you go?" "I moved around a lot. Stayed in shelters, worked whatever jobs I could get. I was so sick during the pregnancy, but I refused to give up my baby. I refused to give up Emma." David was crying now too. "When Emma was born," Sarah continued, "I was in a charity hospital in Nevada. I had nothing. The social worker wanted to take Emma from me. Said I couldn't provide for her. But I begged them to give me one more chance. I found a women's shelter. I got a job as a housekeeper. I saved every penny. For 13 years. For 13 years. By the time Emma was 1, I had saved enough to move to Phoenix and get a tiny apartment. I got the job at the diner. It wasn't much, but it was stable. We had a roof. We had food. We were surviving. Why didn't you try to find me again?" "I did try," Sarah said. "When Emma was 2, I searched online. That's when I found out who you really were. David Morrison, CEO of Morrison Technologies, billionaire married to Jennifer Morrison." David flinched at his late wife's name. "You had moved on," Sarah said simply. "You had built an empire. You had married into society. What was I supposed to do? Show up and say, 'Hey, remember that one-night stand? Surprise, you have a daughter.' Yes?" David shouted. "Yes, Sarah. That's exactly what you should have done. And destroy your life? Destroy your marriage? So Emma could have a father who would resent her for ruining everything. I would never have resented her. You don't know that. You had everything. And I had nothing to offer you except a complicated past and a child you never asked for." David paced, running his hands through his hair. "You should have told me. You should have given me the choice." "I was protecting Emma," Sarah said fiercely, "from being rejected. From being seen as a mistake. From growing up knowing her father didn't want her. I would have wanted her." David's voice cracked. "Sarah, I would have wanted both of you." Silence, then Sarah spoke quietly. "Would you? Really? Or would you have paid me off to go away? Paid child support and visited on holidays? Kept us separate from your real life?" David wanted to argue. But the truth was he didn't know. 20 years ago he had been young and ambitious. He had been broken-hearted over his failed engagement. He had been a mess. Would he have welcomed an unexpected pregnancy from a one-night stand? He wanted to believe he would have. But he couldn't be sure. "I'm different now. I'm not that man anymore." "I know," Sarah said. "I saw it at the airport. You're a good man, David. But that doesn't change the past. No, but it can change the future. So what future?" Sarah laughed without humor. "David, you live in New York in a penthouse. You run a billion-dollar company. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment and make $15 an hour plus tips. We exist in completely different worlds. So we'll bridge them," David said stubbornly. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. Sarah, Emma is my daughter. I have missed 4 years of her life. I will not miss another day. David, I'm flying to Phoenix tomorrow. I need to see her. I need to see both of you." We need to figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. Emma is my daughter. I've raised her alone for 4 years. I don't need you swooping in now trying to play hero. I'm not trying to play hero. I'm trying to be a father. To the daughter I never knew I had. Sarah took a shaky breath. This is too much. This is too fast. I need time to think. I've already lost 4 years, Sarah. I don't have time. What about what I need? What about what Emma needs? You can't just show up and turn our lives upside down. Our lives are already upside down. You have $17,000 in medical debt. You're working yourself to death. Let me help you. I don't want your money. I don't want your pity. It's not pity. Sarah, Emma is my daughter. Providing for her is my responsibility. She's managed just fine without you for 4 years. Has she? Or has she paid the price for your pride? The silence was heavy. That was cruel, Sarah whispered, but it's true. Sarah, I'm not trying to take her from you. You've been an incredible mother. You've sacrificed everything. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. Please, let me be part of her life. Let me be her father. Sarah was crying again. What about your wife? You said she just died. Are you even ready for this? Or are you just looking for something to fill the void she left? The question hit David like a slap. Was he using Emma as a replacement for the wife he had lost? No, yes, he was grieving. But Emma wasn't a replacement. She was a revelation. A part of him he never knew was missing. Jennifer couldn't have children, David said quietly. We tried for years, IVF, surrogates, nothing worked. It broke both our hearts. And now I find out I had a daughter all along. A beautiful daughter who shares my DNA, who has my family's eyes. Sarah, this isn't about replacing anyone. This is about finding something I didn't know I was missing. Sarah was quiet for a long time. I need to go. Emma is asking for me. Sarah, please, let me come see you. Let me meet Emma properly, as her father. I don't know if that's a good idea. Why not? Because she'll get attached. And then what happens when you realize this is too hard? When you go back to New York and forget about us? I won't forget. I could never forget. You don't know that. I do know that. Sarah, I held her hand for 1 hour, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about her since. She's already part of me. Please give me a chance. Sarah struggled with her decision, fighting between what she wanted and what she feared. One visit, she finally said. You can come see us once and then we'll decide where to go from there. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Don't thank me yet. This might be the biggest mistake I've ever made. She hung up. David sat there in his penthouse, phone in hand, staring out at the skyline. He had a daughter, Emma, his Emma, and tomorrow he would see her again. Not as a stranger who found her at an airport, but as her father. David Morrison stepped off the plane in Phoenix 24 hours later, carrying a single bag and a heart full of fear and hope. He had barely slept. His mind had been racing all night, playing through 1,000 different scenarios. What if Emma didn't want him? What if she was scared of him? What if Sarah changed her mind and wouldn't let him see her? His hands trembled as he walked through the airport terminal. The same nervous energy that had kept him awake all night now propelled him forward. Every step toward his daughter felt monumental. Every breath felt heavy with the weight of 4 lost years, but he had to try. He had to make this right. He rented a car at the airport and drove to the address Michael had given him. Sarah's apartment was in a neighborhood that had seen better days. The buildings were old, the paint faded, the parking lot cracked and weedy. But there were children's toys scattered around, bikes leaning against walls, a small playground in the center of the complex. Kids' laughter echoed from somewhere nearby. It was a place where families tried to make the best of what little they had. David thought about his penthouse in New York, the expensive furniture, the view that cost more per month than Sarah probably made in a year. The stark contrast between his world and Emma's world hit him hard. His daughter had been growing up here in this struggling neighborhood while he lived in luxury. David parked and sat in the car for a moment, gathering his courage. His reflection stared back at him from the rearview mirror. Did he look like a father? Did he look like someone Emma could trust, could love? He had faced boardrooms full of hostile investors. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals. He had built a company from nothing. But nothing had ever terrified him as much as walking up those stairs to meet his daughter. Then he texted Sarah, "I'm here." 3 minutes later, his phone rang. "Apartment 212, Sarah said. Second floor. The door on the left. Okay, I'm coming up. His voice was steadier than he felt. David climbed the outdoor stairs, his legs feeling like lead. When he reached apartment 212, he raised his hand to knock. But before he could, the door opened. Sarah stood there looking exhausted and terrified and defiant all at once. She had changed since the airport. She wore simple jeans and a faded t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup. Just raw, honest exhaustion from years of struggling alone. "Hi," David said softly. "Hi," Sarah replied. They stared at each other for a moment. 20 years of history between them. 20 years of what-ifs and might-have-beens. 20 years of decisions that had led them to this doorway. This moment, this impossible second chance. "Come in," Sarah finally said, stepping aside. David entered the small apartment. It was clean but cramped. A worn couch, a small TV, toys scattered across the floor. Photos on the walls, all of Emma. Emma as a baby. Emma at 1 year old, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. 4 years of memories David had missed. 4 years of first words and first steps and first everything. 4 birthdays celebrated without him. 4 Christmases where Emma had probably wondered why she didn't have a daddy like other kids. The weight of it crushed him. "She's in her room," Sarah said, closing the door. "I haven't told her yet. About you, about everything." "What did you tell her?" "That a friend was coming to visit." "That's all she knows," David nodded. "How do you want to do this?" Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, like she was trying to hold herself together. The vulnerability in her posture broke David's heart. This woman had been so strong for so long, carrying this burden alone, protecting Emma at all costs. And now she was being asked to share that responsibility with someone who had been absent for 4 years. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've been up all night trying to figure it out." How do you tell a 4-year-old that the man she met at the airport is actually her father? "Maybe we don't," David said. "Not right away. Maybe we just spend time together. Let her get comfortable with me. And then, when the time is right, we tell her." Sarah nodded slowly. "That might work. She already likes you. She's been talking about you non-stop since the airport. Mr. David this, Mr. David that. She even drew you a picture." David's heart clenched. "She did?" He could barely breathe. His daughter had been thinking about him, missing him, drawing pictures for him, and he hadn't even known she existed until a few days ago. Sarah walked to the refrigerator and pulled off a piece of paper held by a magnet. She handed it to David. It was a child's drawing. Stick figures. A little girl with yellow curls holding hands with a tall man in a black suit. Above them, Emma had written in wobbly letters, "My friend Mr. David." David had to sit down. His legs wouldn't hold him anymore. His hand shook as he held the drawing. The crayon lines were uneven. The letters were backwards and crooked. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his life. "She drew this for you," Sarah said softly. "She wanted me to mail it to you, but I told her I didn't have your address." David held the drawing like it was made of gold. This simple, beautiful expression of a child's affection for him. "For a father she didn't know she had. Can I keep this?" David asked, his voice rough. "Of course, Mommy!" Emma's voice called from down the hall. "Is your friend here yet?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Yes, baby. He's here." The sound of little feet running, and then Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her blonde curls messy from sleep. When she saw David, her face lit up like the sun. Like Christmas morning, like every good thing in the world happening at once. "Mr. David," she screamed. She ran across the room and launched herself at him. David caught her, pulling her into his arms, holding his daughter for the first time as her father. Really her father. Not just a kind stranger, but the man whose DNA she carried. The man whose eyes she had inherited. Emma wrapped her arms around his neck and squeezed tight. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. She felt small and fragile and perfect in his arms. "I knew you would come," she said. "I told Mommy you would come." "Did you get my picture?" "I did," David said, his voice shaking with emotion. "It's the most beautiful picture I've ever seen. I'm going to keep it forever." Emma pulled back and looked at his face. Her little hands touched his cheeks, examining him like she was making sure he was real. "Are you crying again?" she asked, concerned. Her voice was so gentle, so full of care for someone she had only known for a few hours. Yes, David said honestly, but these are happy tears. I'm so happy to see you, Emma, so incredibly happy. Emma smiled. I'm happy too. Do you want to play with me? I have toys. And we can have a tea party. And I can show you my room. I would love to play with you, David said, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. Emma wiggled out of his arms and ran to a corner of the living room where a small bin of toys sat. She started pulling things out, chattering non-stop like only a 4-year-old can. This is my doll. Her name is Princess, and this is my teddy bear. You met him at the airport, remember? And these are my blocks. I can build really tall towers. Want to see? And this is my coloring book. Do you like to color? I love to color. My favorite color is purple. What's your favorite color? David sat down on the floor beside her, watching her animated face as she showed him each treasure. I like blue, he said. They're the same color as your eyes. Emma looked up at him and smiled. We have the same eyes. Mommy says I got them from my daddy. But I don't have a daddy. Do you have kids, Mr. David? The question hung in the air. David glanced at Sarah. Sarah shook her head slightly. Not yet. No, David said carefully. I don't have any children. Until now. Emma tilted her head, confused but not pressing. Well, you can be my friend instead. Friends are good too. Yes, David whispered. Friends are very good. For the next hour, David played with Emma. They built block towers that reached toward the ceiling. They had a tea party with Princess and the teddy bear, sipping imaginary tea from tiny plastic cups. They read picture books, with Emma proudly showing off the few words she could recognize. They colored together, Emma's crayon strokes bold and fearless, David's careful and precise, and the whole time, Sarah watched from the couch, her arms still wrapped around herself, tears occasionally slipping down her cheeks. This man, this stranger who was not a stranger, this father who had missed 4 years but was here now, giving Emma his complete attention. Playing with their daughter, looking at Emma like she was the most precious thing in the world. Like she hung the moon and stars, this was what she had feared. What she had protected Emma from. The possibility of a father who might disappoint, who might leave, who might break Emma's heart. But watching them together, Sarah realized something. Maybe protecting Emma had meant keeping her from this, from having a father who wanted her, who looked at her with wonder and love and absolute devotion. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe protecting Emma meant giving her this, a father who wanted her, who looked at her with wonder and love. Mr. David, Emma said during the tea party, her voice suddenly serious, do you have a little girl? David glanced at Sarah. Sarah's eyes were wide, afraid of what he might say. No, David said carefully, choosing his words. I don't have any children. But I always wanted a daughter. Someone just like you. Why don't you have one then? Emma asked with the simple logic of a child. Because I never met the right person to have children with, David said. Until now. Emma tilted her head, processing this. Until now. But you're here with me and Mommy. Are you going to have children with us? David's throat closed up. Out of the mouths of babes. This innocent question that cut right to the heart of everything. I'd like that, he said softly, his eyes meeting Sarah's across the room. If your Mommy says it's okay. Emma turned to Sarah, her face hopeful and excited. Mommy, is it okay? Sarah couldn't speak. Her emotions were too raw, too overwhelming. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face now. Emma seemed to accept this and went back to pouring imaginary tea, satisfied with the adults' cryptic answers. But something had shifted in the room. Something big and important and undeniable. An unspoken acknowledgement that they were becoming something. Not just 3 people thrown together by chance, but the beginnings of a family. Around noon, Emma started getting hungry. I want pancakes, she announced. Sarah stood up. I'll make you some. Can Mr. David help? Emma asked. Sarah looked at David. David nodded. Of course he can, Sarah said. In the tiny kitchen, Sarah and David worked side by side, making pancakes for their daughter. It felt surreal, domestic, like something from a dream. She's amazing, David said quietly while Emma was distracted by cartoons on TV. Sarah, you've done an incredible job raising her. Thank you, Sarah whispered. I mean it. She's kind and smart and funny and brave. That's all because of you. Sarah wiped her eyes. I did my best. Your best is extraordinary. They finished the pancakes and sat at the small table, the three of them together. Emma chatted between bites, telling David about preschool and her friends and her favorite TV shows. David listened to every word like it was the most important thing he had ever heard. After lunch, Emma started to get sleepy. Sarah carried her to her room for a nap. When Sarah came back out, David was washing dishes in the kitchen. "You don't have to do that," Sarah said. "I want to help." Sarah leaned against the counter, watching him. "What happens now?" she asked. David dried his hands and turned to face her. "I want to be in her life," he said. "I want to be her father. Really be her father, not just visit once a month or send money. I want to be present." "How? You live in New York, we live here. So I'll move." Sarah stared at him. "What? I'll move to Phoenix. I can run my company from anywhere. Most of my work is virtual anyway. I'll buy a house here, close to you, close to Emma. David, you can't uproot your entire life for us. Why not? What's holding me in New York? My wife is gone. I have no children there. My company can run itself. Sarah, you and Emma are the only real things I have. The only things that matter." Sarah shook her head. "This is crazy. You barely know us. I know Emma is my daughter. I know you're an incredible woman who has sacrificed everything for her. I know that when I held Emma's hand at the airport, I felt more alive than I had in months." "That's enough. But what if it doesn't work out? What if Emma gets attached and then you realize this is too hard?" David stepped closer to Sarah. "I won't realize that," he said firmly, "because it isn't too hard. Nothing about loving Emma could ever be too hard." Sarah looked up at him, and for the first time since the airport he saw hope in her eyes. Cautious, terrified hope. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too. What if we mess this up? Then we'll figure it out together." Sarah closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was something different there. Something that looked like surrender. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? Okay. You can be part of her life. We'll figure out how to make it work." David felt relief wash through him so powerfully he almost collapsed. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you, Sarah." But Sarah held up a hand. "On one condition," she said. "Anything. We tell Emma the truth soon. She deserves to know you're her father." "She deserves to know the truth." David nodded. "Agreed. When?" "Give it a week. Let her get used to you being around. And then we'll sit her down and explain everything." "1 week," David agreed. They stood there in the small kitchen, two people bound together by a child they had created 20 years ago. Two people trying to build a bridge between two impossible worlds. "I should go," David said finally. "Let you and Emma rest." Sarah walked him to the door. Before he left, David turned back. "Sarah," he said, "I know I can't change the past. I know I can't give back those 4 years. But I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life making up for them. I will be the father Emma deserves. I will be there for both of you. Always." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. "I believe you," she said softly, and for the first time in 20 years, she meant it. 1 week later, David sat in Sarah's living room, his palms sweating. It was time to tell Emma the truth. He had spent every day that week with them. He had taken Emma to the park. He had read her bedtime stories. He had made breakfast with Sarah. He had paid off Sarah's medical debt without telling her, arranging it through the hospital directly. He had started looking at houses in Phoenix. Big houses with yards. Houses where Emma could play and grow and be happy. He had told his board of directors that he was relocating. They had been shocked but supportive. David Morrison could run his company from anywhere, and now it was time for the most important conversation of his life. Sarah sat beside him on the couch. Emma was on the floor playing with blocks. "Emma, sweetie," Sarah said gently, "can you come sit with us? We need to talk to you about something important." Emma looked up, curious but not worried. She climbed onto the couch between Sarah and David. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "No, baby. You're not in trouble. We just need to tell you something." Emma looked between them, waiting. Sarah took a deep breath and looked at David. He nodded, giving her strength. "Emma," Sarah began, "do you remember when you asked Mr. David if he had any children?" Emma nodded. "He said no." "Well, that wasn't exactly true. He does have a child. He just didn't know about her until recently." Emma's eyes widened. "He has a little girl. Where is she?" Sarah's voice shook. "She's right here, baby. It's you. David is your daddy." Emma looked confused. "My daddy? Yes, David said softly. I'm your father, Emma. I didn't know about you for a very long time, but I know now. And I love you so much. Emma looked at Sarah. Mommy, is this true? Yes, baby. It's true. Emma processed this for a long moment. Her little face scrunched up as she tried to understand. But where were you? Emma asked David. Why didn't you come see me before? David's heart broke. I didn't know you existed, sweetheart. Your mommy and I met a long time ago before you were born, and then we lost touch with each other. I spent years not knowing I had a daughter, but the moment I found out, I came straight here. Because you're the most important thing in the world to me. So you're my real daddy? Emma asked. Yes, Emma looked at him very seriously. Are you going to leave like other kids' daddies do? David pulled Emma onto his lap, holding her close. No, he said firmly. I'm never leaving you. I'm going to be here for the rest of your life. I'm going to watch you grow up. I'm going to be at every birthday party and every Christmas and every school play. I promise. Emma thought about this. Can I call you Daddy instead of Mr. David? David felt tears spring to his eyes. I would love that, Emma smiled. Then she threw her arms around his neck. I always wanted a daddy, she whispered. David held her tight. This precious child who had found him crying in an airport and changed his life forever. And I always wanted a daughter, he whispered back. I just didn't know it until I met you. Sarah was crying openly now. She reached over and put her hand on David's arm. Thank you, she mouthed. The next few months were a whirlwind. David bought a house in Phoenix. Not a mansion, but a beautiful home with a yard and a swing set and a bedroom fit for a princess. He moved his entire life across the country. He set up a home office and continued running his company, remotely and every day. He was there for Emma. He took her to preschool. He attended parent-teacher conferences. He made dinner with Sarah. He read bedtime stories. He bandaged scraped knees. He wiped away tears. He was a father, and it was the best thing he had ever been. Sarah watched it all with amazement. This man, who had been a stranger 6 months ago, was now the center of their lives. He had stepped into the role of father like he had been preparing for it his whole life. But more than that, something else was happening, something neither of them had expected. They were falling in love, not the desperate, grief-stricken love of 20 years ago, but something real, something built on shared mornings and late-night conversations, something built on watching Emma grow together. One evening, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and David sat on the porch of his new house, watching the sunset. I never thought I'd have this, Sarah said softly. Have what? A family. A partner. Someone to share the weight with. David took her hand. You've always had it in you, Sarah. You've always been strong enough for 2 people. But I don't have to be anymore, Sarah said, looking at him. Because you're here. David squeezed her hand. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Sarah turned to face him fully. David, I need to say something. Okay, I was wrong. All those years ago when I decided not to find you, when I decided to protect Emma by keeping her from you, I was wrong. She needed you. I needed you. And I'm sorry it took so long for us to find each other again. David shook his head. You did what you thought was right. You protected Emma. That's all any parent can do. But she could have had you from the beginning. She could have had a father who loved her. She has me now. That's all that matters. Sarah smiled through her tears. When did you become so wise? When a 4-year-old asked me why I was crying and reminded me that life was still worth living. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then David spoke. Sarah, there's something I need to ask you. What? David stood up and walked to the porch railing, his back to her. These past few months have been the happiest of my life, he said. Being Emma's father, being part of your lives. It's everything I never knew I needed. David, he turned to face her. I love you, Sarah. I think I've loved you since that night 20 years ago. And I've definitely loved you since the moment you walked back into my life. I love the mother you are, the woman you are, the strength and the kindness and the courage you have. Sarah stood up, her heart pounding. I love you too, she whispered. David crossed the porch and took both her hands in his. Then marry me, he said. Sarah's breath caught. What? Marry me? Let's be a real family. Let's give Emma what she deserves. 2 parents who love her and love each other. David, this is so fast, is it? We've known each other for 20 years. We have a daughter together. We've built a life together these past few months. What are we waiting for? Sarah laughed, a sound of pure joy. I don't know. I don't know what we're waiting for. So say yes. Sarah looked at this man, this incredible man who had lost everything and found his way back to life through their daughter. This man who had given up his entire world to be a father. This man she loved. Yes, she said. Yes, David, I'll marry you. David pulled her into his arms and kissed her. A kiss that was 20 years in the making. A kiss that sealed their future. Inside the house, Emma's voice called out, Daddy, Mommy? Where are you? They broke apart, laughing. We're out here, baby, Sarah called. Emma appeared at the door in her princess nightgown, rubbing her eyes. I had a bad dream, she said. David scooped her up. Come here, sweetheart. Daddy's got you. Emma snuggled into his chest, already half asleep again. I love you, Daddy, she mumbled. I love you too, princess. More than all the stars in the sky. Sarah watched them, her two favorite people in the world, and felt her heart overflow. This was it. This was everything. They had found their way through the darkness, through loss and pain and impossible odds, and they had found each other, a family finally. 2 years later, Emma Rose Morrison stood at the altar of a small church in Phoenix, carefully holding a basket of flower petals. She was 6 years old now, taller, more confident, but still the same sweet, brave girl who had found a crying stranger in an airport and changed 2 lives forever. Do I throw the flowers now? Emma whispered to David, who stood beside her in a tuxedo. Almost, princess, David whispered back. Wait for the music, Emma nodded solemnly. This was an important job. She was the flower girl at her parents' wedding. Well, technically it was their second wedding. They had gotten married quietly at the courthouse 2 years ago, so David could legally be Emma's father and make all the medical and school decisions he needed to make. But Sarah had always dreamed of a real wedding, with a white dress and flowers and family, so David had given her exactly that. The music began. Emma carefully walked down the aisle, tossing rose petals like she had practiced 100 times. She made it to the front and sat in the first row next to David's mother, who was crying happy tears. David had been so nervous about introducing Emma to his family, but his mother had taken one look at her granddaughter and fallen instantly in love. Now she was Emma's favorite person besides her parents. The bridal march started. Everyone stood, and Sarah appeared at the back of the church. She looked like a dream in her white dress, simple but elegant. Her dark hair was up, showing off her face. She was smiling and crying at the same time. David couldn't breathe. After everything they had been through, after 20 years of separation and struggle and pain, here they were together. Sarah walked down the aisle alone. She had no father to give her away, but she didn't need one. She was giving herself to David freely, choosing him, choosing this life. When she reached the altar, David took her hands. Hi, he whispered. Hi, she whispered back. The ceremony was beautiful, simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Sarah, David said, his voice shaking with emotion, you saved my life twice. Once on a rainy night in Seattle, and once in a Dallas airport when our daughter found me at my lowest moment. You gave me the greatest gift I've ever received. You gave me Emma. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to keep going. I promise to spend the rest of my life cherishing you, protecting you, and loving you with everything I have. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. David, she said, I spent 13 years alone, believing that I had to be strong enough for 2 people. But you taught me that real strength is letting someone in, letting someone share the weight. You didn't just become Emma's father. You became my partner, my best friend, the love of my life. And I promise to spend the rest of my days by your side, building this beautiful life we've created together. The minister smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. David pulled Sarah close and kissed her as their family and friends erupted in applause. Emma jumped up from her seat. Can I hug you now? Everyone laughed. Come here, baby, Sarah called. Emma ran up to the altar and David and Sarah pulled her into their embrace. The 3 of them stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, a family finally complete. The reception was held in the church hall. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of love. David's business associates mingled with Sarah's co-workers from the diner. Emma danced with her grandmother and ate too much cake. During the father-daughter dance, David held Emma in his arms as they swayed to the music. "Daddy," Emma said. "Yes, Princess? Do you remember when I found you at the airport?" "Of course I remember. That was the most important day of my life." "Mine too," Emma said seriously, "because that's when I got my daddy." David held her tighter. "And that's when I got my daughter. Are you still sad? Like you were that day?" David looked over at Sarah, who was laughing with his mother. "No, sweetheart. I'm not sad anymore. I'm the happiest I've ever been." "Good," Emma said, "because you smile a lot now." "I like it when you smile." Later that evening, after Emma had been taken home by David's mother for the night, David and Sarah stood on the balcony of their hotel room, looking out at the Phoenix skyline. "Can you believe we're here?" Sarah asked, leaning against David's chest. "Sometimes it still feels like a dream," David admitted. "Like I'm going to wake up and be back in that airport, crying and alone. But you're not alone. No, I have you. And Emma, and a life I never imagined possible." Sarah turned in his arms to face him. "What happened to your company? You used to work 80 hours a week. Now you barely work 40. David smiled. "I hired a CEO to run day-to-day operations. I'm still chairman of the board, but I'm not in the weeds anymore. Turns out my company runs better when I'm not trying to control everything. And you're okay with that." "Are you kidding?" "I get to have breakfast with my daughter every morning. I get to take her to school. I get to come home at 5 and have dinner with my family. I get to be present for every moment. Sarah, I built that company for my late wife. To prove something to her family? To prove I was worthy of her. But now I know what I'm really worthy of. This our family. Nothing else matters." Sarah kissed him softly. "I love you. I love you too." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. "Do you ever wonder what your late wife would think?" Sarah asked quietly. "About us. About Emma." David had thought about this often. Jennifer had been a good woman. Kind, gentle. She had wanted children so desperately. Would she be happy that he had found Emma? Or would she feel replaced? "I think she would be happy," David said finally. "Jennifer wanted me to have a family. She wanted me to be a father. She would have loved Emma. I'm sorry I never got to meet her." "Me too. You two would have been friends." Sarah rested her head on David's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up. For finding us. For loving Emma so completely. For giving me a life I never thought I could have. You did the same for me, Sarah. You and Emma saved me when I was drowning. You gave me something to live for." They held each other as the night deepened around them. Two people who had met by chance 20 years ago. Two people who had created a life together in one stolen night. Two people who had been separated by fear and misunderstanding. And two people who had found their way back to each other against all odds, all because a lost 4-year-old girl had seen a sad businessman crying in an airport and asked him why. That single question had changed everything. It had led to truth, to family, to love. It had led to healing. And now, 2 years after that fateful day, David Morrison and Sarah Thompson. Morrison stood together under the stars, knowing that sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways. Sometimes it takes 20 years and a chance encounter to bring two people together. Sometimes the path to happiness is long and painful, and full of obstacles. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, a child appears in your darkest moment and reminds you that life is still worth living, that there are still reasons to smile, that there is still hope. Emma had been that reminder for David, and now she was growing up surrounded by love. Two parents who adored her, a grandmother who spoiled her, a life full of promise and possibility. She would never remember being poor, never remember the struggle, never remember the nights her mother cried herself to sleep wondering how they would survive. All Emma would remember was love, and that was the greatest gift David and Sarah could give her, the gift of a childhood full of joy, the gift of a family that was unbreakable, the gift of knowing she was wanted and cherished and protected. As David and Sarah finally went inside to begin their honeymoon, neither of them knew what the future would hold. There would be challenges ahead. There would be hard days and difficult decisions, but they would face it all together as a family, and that made everything possible.